So it was the sermon title, so we have to start there. Did anyone here smell the corpse flower that was blooming in the Arnold Arboretum? Okay, I'm in good company then, because I didn't smell it either. But I saw it in the Jamaica Plain neighborhood Facebook groups that I still lurk in years after moving to Malden. Don't tell them, they're very serious about those things. I saw it, the corpse flower is blooming. And there was a live stream, and you can watch also a time-lapse video of the whole thing blooming on the Arnold Arboretum's blog. I watched friends cancel plans, drop everything to go post selfies with it, 5 feet high, smelling like rotting meat. Corpse flowers, as maybe you know, I didn't know, take 7 to 12 years to bloom. This one bloomed after 11, and its famous smell is to attract beetles and flies that serve as its pollinators. After taking its leisurely 7 to 12 years to bloom, the corpse flower only blooms for 48 hours. Hence the all-out, the corpse flower is blooming. It seems so notable that something would bloom so infrequently, so briefly, and yet still bloom. And within that rarity, awe. The 5 foot, I learned it's called inflorescence, I think I'm saying that right, which is what looks like the flower of it. If the 5 foot inflorescence bloomed every month or even every year, I wonder, would we gather round in the same way? Would I find all of my Facebook groups that I'm illegally in for the neighborhood I used to live in abuzz with news? Our attention focused, zooming in because of the rareness, the 48-hour bloom. Finding awe isn't hard, writes John Green. It is our attentiveness that's in short supply, our ability and willingness to do the work that awe requires. I find this to be true in my own life. And of course, there's both ordinary, this day, and extraordinary. The corpse flower is blooming after 11 years, awe. Depending on the moment, we might find that awe if we bring our attention to it in the act of breathing, in whatever we ate this morning, in that cup of coffee. Something far more normal than a corpse flower blooming. If I asked each of us here today where we experienced awe so far this morning, I'm sure we would each be able to come up with something. And yet, as we all know, beauty exists amidst everything else. The to-do lists, the jobs that must get done, the people to care for, including ourselves, the heartbreak, violence, anxiety, and stress of the world. And sometimes it is the rareness of the moment that focuses our attention, that pulls us in, helps us tune out the noise to say, this I can set aside some awe time, some attention for. This I want to make sure I really take in. My family went to Texas this April for a wedding of dear friends, and it was not until we could not find a rental car for love or any amount of money that we realized their wedding was the weekend of the eclipse. And it was sort of hilarious to go from one part of the country inundated with folks searching for the eclipse here to another part of the country inundated with folks searching for the eclipse. But so we did. And perhaps so did some of you, whether you traveled to the path of totality or stayed right here and maybe turned your face a little upward for 4 minutes. And I'm curious, for any of you who felt the pull to witness the eclipse, what made you want to? And if there's anyone who wants to shout anything out loud, I'll repeat it back in the mic. And apologies to folks on Zoom, I don't have it together to hear your responses, but feel free to put them in the chat. What made you want to turn your face up, if indeed you did?
Wonder.
Wonder. Awe. Uniqueness. Rarity.
To share the experience.
To share the experience. That's my kid shouting out something. She was there. She did turn her little face up because everyone else was doing it. Words from the poem that was our reading: when we stand, faces upturned, waiting for that brilliant flash of promise, and we think, this is the way it will be. We waited, as perhaps some of you did, with our infamous cardboard glasses, and it truly did seem, at least in our little moment in Austin, Texas, like in some way the world paused. The people working at the gas station across the street all came outside. The construction workers stopped their constructing. The roads were mostly clear. And everywhere, faces upturned. I cried. I really did not expect to. And I'm not totally sure why. Amazement at the weirdness of the crescent and the darkness. Definitely some fear that maybe something had broken irrevocably and the sun would not return and there we would be forever. But I think, and someone shared this, that the real energy behind my tears was a sense of common humanity, of connection to all beings. That is true every moment, no more or less true just because the moon and sun are doing this funky thing. But as folks have shared, there is something about the rarity and uniqueness that can focus our attention. I felt the sense of we are all just here, living on this wild earth under this one sometimes eclipsing sun. And I imagined all people all over the earth, across many lands and languages, in the path of totality, elders and babes, peoples at work and at rest, some of my dearest loved ones under the same eclipse as so many strangers I will never meet. One world eclipsed. And I cried, I think, for our shared humanity, but maybe more so for all of the moments when we don't feel that shared humanity. For the violence and harm and war and massacres that no eclipse could stop, that were ongoing, even in those moments of sacredness. And then, after the darkness and hush and pause, the light returning, a reminder that we get each morning, but somehow, yes, more poignant after the sun's midday departure, that the sun does rise amidst it all. Heschel's words from our call to worship that I feel are quoted often, and often I am not listening, but I am trying to listen today. Our goal should be to live life in radical amazement, to get up in the morning and look at the world in a way that takes nothing for granted. Everything is phenomenal. Everything is incredible. Perhaps some of you, like me, may have been spending a little more time being amazed by the horrors and heartbreaks and stresses of our world than amazed at the incredible. Perhaps some of you, like me, are getting up in the morning and looking at the world with more sadness of what it has become and fear for what it could be becoming than awe at the phenomenal. And to myself, to us, I say, that is so understandable. There are a million reasons to be more amazed at the human ability for harm than beauty. And so I say to myself, for anyone who that is true for, remember those moments of amazement where the phenomenal pierced through, where the corpse flower or the eclipse reminded me that yes, humans are capable of great horrors, and somehow, despite it all, we are capable of great awe. We're such weird creatures, humans, even in 2024, with a tiny computer in most hands and AI infiltrating more and more of our lives each day. We will drive or fly for hours, find our way across the globe for 4 minutes of eclipse. A few hours after totality found us in a busy Austin airport, surrounded by our fellow awe-inspired travelers, many decked out in their totality t-shirts, now engaged in the very uncosmic, very mundane act of schlepping baggage and children, hustling through security, standing in lines for the bathroom, the ticket counter, boarding. A once-in-a-lifetime spiritual, existential, cosmological moment side by side with standing in line for the bathroom. The eclipse version of, as Jack Kornfield famously said, after the ecstasy, the laundry. Earlier this summer, many of us who live here in eastern Massachusetts and New England heard about the possibility to see northern lights as far south as right here in Cambridge and even a little further south. For nights, it seemed like everyone in this area had stunning photos of greens and purples hovering in the sky. On the night deemed most likely to be able to see the lights, I had a particularly long, slogging day for whatever reason, I can't remember. I had put my 1-year-old to bed, did a few hours of previously abandoned computer work, picked up the toys, cleaned up the kitchen, and was about to fall into bed when I thought, maybe I'll just go in the backyard and see what I can see. And what I could see was what I can usually see from my backyard. In other words, all laundry, no ecstasy. And I was headed inside with my heart set on bed when my partner Oscar got home from his soccer game. "Should we see the lights?" he said, after figuring out why I was in my pajamas standing in the driveway at 11 p.m. Our housemate was home, so it was in fact an option to head out into the night in search of awe, in search of amazement. I was so tired, mentally and physically ready for bed, and we had that annoying back and forth that often happens between people who know each other very well and can't quite decide what to do before we made the decision to just go for it and head to nearby Waits Mountain, the highest area nearby in our neighborhood in Malden. We could not see them with our bare eyes, but through our iPhones, as the internet told us, we could see a little bit of a green haze hovering across the sky. It wasn't, to be honest, that impressive, but also still sort of really impressive all at once. And all of our neighbors were wandering about on Waits Mountain with us, young and old, on foot and in cars, some with giant fancy cameras, others none at all, eagerly upturned heads. And again, I wondered at it. In a world where we're often inundated with intensity of all kinds, glitz and glamour, destruction and devastation, our brains accustomed to barely pausing to take in images of dying children or tsunamis, fires, human and natural disasters. Amidst all of that, here we were with a dozen of our closest unknown neighbors staring at a very lo-fi, subdued, barely visible green glow in the sky, having the time of our lives. In her book, How to Do Nothing, Resisting the Attention Economy, the writer, artist, and bird watcher Jenny Odell writes about how our attention is captured and monetized, often through social media, creating a world where we put our attention and when we choose to withdraw it can be a form of powerful resistance. She writes, "It is with acts of attention that we decide who to hear, who to see, who in our world has agency. In this way, attention forms the ground not just for love, but for ethics." I'm 100% confident that not all of the thousands of people who traveled with me to see the eclipse, who climbed the tallest near thing they could to see the northern lights, who hustled over to smell the blooming corpse flower, would see their decisions as anti-capitalist acts of attention. But I sort of do, to be honest. And it is a bit of a balm for my cynical, tired heart that something about being human makes us want to feel that awe, even now, especially now. That something about being human, even those of us who have drunk the Kool-Aid of racism, patriarchy, oppression, domination, somehow will still travel miles for a shot at witnessing 4 minutes of darkness or a sky full of greens and purples. And this is not, to be very clear, because I think that awe will solve injustice or amazement will automatically redistribute power or create collective liberation. In fact, I'm confident they won't, otherwise we would have a different world. But it is because I think in some sort of meta way, it reminds me of my own amazement. I'm amazed at what humans, especially those so different from me, will do to be amazed in the same way that I yearn to be amazed. Even humans whose hearts seem to have hardened. It seems almost universal, the pull to witness extraordinary natural events. And this amazement reminds me of one of our core theological beliefs as Unitarian Universalists, that revelation is not sealed, that there are truths always emerging, and that there is so much we don't know. Something incredible might be in the sky or just down the street in the greenhouse. And humans, even now, still remember how to turn our heads toward it. For Adele, it's bird watching that is reclaiming her attention in service of awe and amazement. She writes, "I looked over at my neighbor, the song sparrow, and thought about how just a few years ago I wouldn't have known its name, might not even know it was a sparrow, might not have even seen it at all. How lonely that world seems in comparison to this one." She says, "But the sparrow and I are no longer strangers. We were both from the same place, Earth, made of the same stuff, and most important, we were both alive." In these times of so much heartbreak, some in our own lives, much in the life of the world, may we remember to be amazed. May we remember that despite it all, we humans yearn for awe. May we remember the connection between each of us and this earth that moves us to look toward the sky, to turn up our heads, to smell the corpse flower, to see the eclipse, to see even very mediocre northern lights, to go after awe, big awe that is rare and unique, and little awe that is the everyday sparrow next to us. May we take our tired selves to whatever nearby mountain we need, even now, especially now. Amen, and may it be so.